Good day. In this video, I would like, and this is a new series, I would like to look at the role of state-owned enterprise boards, role of the boards of the public-private enterprises in Namibia, and do the state-owned enterprises or public-private enterprise boards have what it takes? Now, this title has been sparked by an article in the Namibian Sun of 15th April 2024, written by Dr. Raimo Nanda. The topic, do state enterprise boards have what it takes? Now, we use the term public-private enterprises in Namibia, but nonetheless, because of the change of the legislation, and this is a very serious and important question to ask that need to be critically analyzed within the context of political impunity by ministers that appoint people on the board, mostly people appointed of political affiliation based on patronage and connections to the politicians, and not based on merit. And this is evident in a number of boards. Now, in order to understand or to answer this question, do state or do public enterprise boards have what it takes, one need to ask the question, as Thomas Sell often asks, compared to what, at what, and at what cost, and what will make it change for the better. Now, one has to go back to the fiduciary duties of directors of a board in order to say compared to what, before we can answer the question, do public enterprise boards have what it takes? Now, the first fiduciary duty, as outlined in the Corporate Citizen by Mervyn King, a retired judge in South Africa. It was very instrumental in written King 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's been used in Southern Africa as the guidance for corporate boards and the fiduciary duty, although voluntary applied still in South Africa and Namibia. The first important fiduciary duty, although people sometimes like to focus on fiduciary powers instead of fiduciary duties, but I would say the focus is power means a duty, and that implies also responsibility, accountability, and then liability. So the first fiduciary duty is good faith of a director. A director of a company appointed on a public-private enterprise board, as well as on private boards, any board of trustees need to have good faith. Now, what does it mean? It means that you should not have any conflict of interest in representing the interests of the public-private enterprise or the company, or for that matter, any board of trustees you are sitting on. Now, that also implies that one should declare your interests before you accept being appointed as a board member. And then there should also be an asset register to indicate what is and also what is your conflict of interest if you declare it, and it should be declared at every meeting based on the agenda of the meeting. So there should be a separate register kept to take a note and take a record of declaration of conflict of interest. And if you are not sure, then if it's a conflict of interest, then it's better for a director to declare it anyway, because you don't want perceptions to be created that you are corrupt, or have used your influence, or used lobbying before a board member, before a board meeting, especially if you don't have the evidence to prove the opposite. So, because the problem with corruption and perception is that perceptions escalate and becomes worse in the absence of proof of evidence. And in many cases, people can't provide the evidence. So don't allow such opportunities that can hand on your reputation and cause reputational damage as a board member, instead of declaring your interest before the time. The second fiduciary duty is care. That means you should be take extra skill, take extra accountability of a public-private enterprise or a company, the same way that you would have taken care of an unable person, to care for an unable person. So a company or a public enterprise that is, in a public enterprise, you have more accountability towards the public. While in a company, you only have accountability towards the shareholders and the stakeholders and the customers. That is limited compared to a public enterprise where you are supposed to serve the people of the country. So it means a much bigger accountability for caring for such a disabled, as if a company is disabled for caring for its own interests. Because a company and a public enterprise is not a human being, but it means that the company or the public enterprise you're taking care of is as, or should be regarded as, a disabled person by the director. Then the third fiduciary duty is a skill. You must bring the competence, the ability, the attitude, the skill with the experience, a specific skill to the board that nobody else on the board possess, although you can have overlapping, duplicating duties to some extent on a board. So I think that's important to remember. What is the skill that you bring to a board? And if your skills are not enough, well, then you should declare as such and decide not to take the position of a board member, because it's not about your ego and it's not about your status. It's about who is the most appropriate person and the most competent person based on merit to fill the position of a board member. And if the minister doesn't have that ability because of her political connections and because of conflict of interest and patronage to get voted in with the next election, obviously she will not have access to the best people. And therefore, board members should have the accountability, and they should have the integrity and the honesty to decline board membership in such a case where they don't have the skill and the competency and the experience to do so. Then the due diligence is the fourth fiduciary duty. That means that one should do your homework. It means you need to become skillful and competent about the company and the public-private enterprise to the best of your abilities. To study the content of the documents received before a meeting as best as possible, and to find answers in terms of verification of what's been claimed, and also to do your homework and your own research and to make sure you find the answers if you don't have the answers yourself. and not to come to board meetings if you haven't studied the documents in detail, because that means that you haven't taken due diligence, you haven't done your homework, you're not capable or to the best ability prepared for the board meeting. And if you are not prepared, well, then you should ask for a postponement, except if it's due to your own negligence to have studied the board documents. Now, these four fiduciary duties, good faith, care, skill, and due diligence, should all be based on the what we call intellectual honesty. So intellectual honesty is the foundation on which all of these fiduciary duties actually are embedded in. So what is intellectual honesty? It means you must be comfortable with your own consciousness, that you have been cleared by your own conscience, and that you have done and executed your fiduciary duties to the best of your ability, and where you couldn't, you have taken some extra measures in order to do so. That means you should not lie to yourself. As Jordan Peterson says, try at least not to lie. And that is to a great extent enough in order to be intellectually honest to yourself, where you are honest to your own consciousness. When you wake up at 3 o'clock in the night and you cannot sleep, that you will be comfortable with whatever the decision on the board you voted for, or what the board has been taken. So these fiduciary duties are the responsibility of board members, and there's too much focus on seeing board membership as a status, as an ego thing, instead of looking at it from an intellectual point of view and from a conscious point of view, to being honest to oneself. And then accountability means answerability. The fiduciary duties, these directors should be accountable to the stakeholders and the shareholders of that specific public enterprise. And the stakeholders and the customers, in the case of public enterprises, are actually the citizens of a country. So that means also transparency should be involved, that in order to ensure accountability for that. So these values are interlinked, or principles: responsibility, accountability, transparency. And then what's important, every country that where you have fiduciary duties, or where you have this type of board membership, have their own Companies Act. And the Companies Act of Namibia states that if you don't, as a board member, agree with a specific decision, and then you should state, or not, to put it that way, it's not in the Companies Act, but by implication of taking a collective decision where you have contributed as an individual, to put it that way, to a specific decision in which you have been not in agreement, and because of a conflict of interest to some extent, or due to your inability or not to have the knowledge or experience, then you should declare that should be listed in the meetings, in the minutes of the meeting, in order to not being able to be liable. What is liability? Liability is a legal term that means that if you don't fulfill your duties as you should be as a board member, you can be sued, and you are legally implied to take the rap for whatever such legal action should be by not fulfilling your individual accountability in declaring and recording your decision that doesn't comply with the general view of the board, and therefore it should be separately recorded in the minutes so that you can cover yourself and your own individual liability. So although board members can take collective decisions, take decisions on boards, it also means that they are individually liable for taking the decision. Now, in Namibia specific, it is very, very seldom where a liability is being executed. And to a large extent, what contributes to this is that board members of public-private enterprises and there are more than 100 of them in Namibia. And there was already in 2018 already more than about 100, and now it's even more. Is because ministers that are political representatives appoint people on boards. That means you will not have people on boards that are based on merit. They are not the best people that will be appointed. If you have patronage, if you have conflict of interest, if you have nepotism, if you have abuse of power, if you have strings attached, if you have a revolving door. Now, all these are different manifestations of corruption that is being handled in a different series about understanding corruption, looking at the evil of corruption that you'll also find on YouTube. So, in this first series or in this specific first video about the series about do state or do public-private enterprises boards have what it takes, where we specifically look at the fiduciary duties of boards. We conclude then this specific video on that, and then the second video will look at different boards in Namibia and the role of political impunity and also the role of increasing executive power and that dominate a technocratic state like Namibia with a growing bureaucracy, provide for unaccountable and not liable execution of the fiduciary duties by looking at a number of such boards. Thank you very much. I hope you understand now the fiduciary duties of board members much better with specific reference to Namibia and a gratitude to Mervyn King.